Hello, Master Manifestors. Welcome back to MethodMuse, where we talk about science-based manifestation methods and concepts. Today, we're talking about auditing mental avatars. So, what's a mental avatar? It's an identity icon that our brain uses to get an idea of what other people are like. And we're always basing our perspectives of other people and our perceptions of them on our own system. When we assess another system, we do it through our system. So we're not actually seeing the person themselves, their actual complexity. We're taking a mental snapshot of our impressions of them. Now, when you're thinking about someone and you're thinking about maybe something they said or something they did and their actual physical actions, the things that they have literally done, that's a little bit more uh, of a standard to use for what sort of person they might be, what sort of values they might have, because what they're saying doesn't really matter. They may think of themselves way differently than they actually present in the world. And in a lot of cases, we all have some element of that within ourselves. We will be thinking of ourselves differently than in the way that we actually act. And it's only through awareness and attention and acceptance of those, the things that we notice about that we're able to adjust those things or to just become more aware of them. You don't even necessarily need to adjust everything. It's really just about becoming more aware and your system more naturally set itself appropriately. So these mental masks are an opportunity to examine ourselves and become more self-aware. Because through them, we can see like what we identify in others, what we're aligning with, what we're sort of looking for. Because a lot of that stuff usually flies under the surface. Most of the time when we meet someone and we feel good or bad about them, it's kind of a gut feeling. And we don't always get an opportunity to name it because it's part of our assumptions and associations about the world, right? And it's a preset, so it just moves right through before we really get a chance to examine it. But when you have the person just in your head and you're just thinking about, who is this person to me and what do I think about them? How do I feel about them? And how do I feel about the things they've said and done? It gives us a more round view of who someone might be. Remember, you will never see the inside of somebody else's world. They will never see yours. You will never know them as well as they have access to know them. It doesn't mean they necessarily know themselves. And it doesn't necessarily mean we know ourselves, even though we have the only greatest access to ourselves. But that's the point of mastering manifestation, right? Get to know ourselves better so we can have the experiences that we really want to have and have satisfaction in them. And that inner integrity, that solidness of self, of core self, keeps us from being taken in by outside forces, you might say, because there are tons and tons of outside states, outside systems. And if you're not very solid in your values, in your trajectory, in where you want to be in your experience, you'll naturally follow the strongest of them, the most influential. So you want to be the most influential to yourself that you possibly can be. So you need that inner integrity and those boundaries between you and these mental avatars, right? So let's say you have a mental avatar that's very critical of you and is always commenting, oh, you're stupid. Why are you always trying these new things? Why are you always thinking outside of the box? You see how dumb this sounds? Yeah, that's kind of like what they do. And if you really think about what they're saying, it's like, this doesn't make any sense. It's not true. And it just immediately flattens the power of that inner critic. Just remember, it is not actually that person talking to your head. It is a sort of model of them that your brain has made to try to hold you to this identity standard that you've sort of created in your mind. Now, does that mean that other people aren't responsible for their actions? No, they are. They are definitely, everybody is responsible for their own actions because we are the only ones that have control over those actions or any level of control over the things that we do. So yes, you still need to hold people responsible for the things that they say and do in the positive and the negative, or however you perceive that. Because positive and negative are based on person's values, right? Based on the system's core functioning and programming, based on its values and what it prioritizes, right? And not everybody prioritizes what you prioritize. It doesn't make them wrong. It makes their system different and reliant on different things with different needs. And that's a really important thing to recognize in other people. They are not who we are. Okay. So it's important to recognize they're sort of like this outside mystery planet, you know, and we can see the surface and we can see the effects around the planet, but we will never know what's actually inside of it. We can sort of see, and they might tell us, and they might be very honest, and we can know in that way, especially if they're very consistent in their behavior. And you can usually tell somebody's being honest when they're very consistent in their behavior. And then we can know if they're willing to give that to us. But, we need to be focusing on our inner world and how it is reacting to other worlds, and not in trying to edit or change those other systems, because that wastes energy and wastes your lovely manifestation energy. So always focus it in on your system, protecting your system, stabilizing your system from the core on out. This is an inside out process, not an outside in process. Not changing the outside to make the inside feel better. We are adjusting the inside state to experience better things on the outside. So I hope this has helped you understand mental avatars and how to audit them, how to examine them, how to think about them. Thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, and sign up for the MethodMuse newsletter in the description below.